If you've seen our last two vlogs, you'll know that in the last 2 days we took our narrowboat across the River Mersey from Liverpool to Ellesmere Port, and then cruised the 36 miles of the Manchester Ship Canal into Salford Quays, where we spent the night. You can book to stay in the Quays for a few nights, but we've arranged to travel up through Pomona Lock and back onto the Bridgwater Canal this morning. Passage through the lock is available daily at 8 a.m, but you must pre-book at least 72 hours in advance, and there is a charge.
Michael has one last adventure planned for us before we go through the lock. We're going to cruise from Salford Quays on the upper reaches of the Manchester Ship Canal and up the River Irwell as far as you can go into Manchester.
It's about 6:45 a.m, and it's cold and wet and dark. We are both pretty tired from the last 2 days of traveling, but this will be our only opportunity to venture onto the River Irwell, so it's now or never. When we arrived last night, the very friendly people in the Water Sports Centre gave us a map and explained how far we would be able to travel up the Irwell and where we would need to turn around. They can take their rowing boats a little further up the river, but narrowboats should turn at the new Lowry footbridge. The official limit of navigation is a bit further upstream, but it became silted up after the Boxing Day floods of 2015, and we're told it's no longer navigable.
There's something a little magical about being on the move this early. The city's coming to life around us, and it feels very peaceful out on the water.
The Salford docks were opened in 1894, and at the time were the third busiest port in Britain, despite being so far inland. Manchester liners were based in the docks and provided a cargo and passenger service between Manchester and America. The docks took up a huge area just outside the city centre. The docks closed in 1982, and the area was eventually redeveloped into what is now known as Salford Quays. There are commercial and residential zones, as well as recreation and cultural areas. It's a pretty vibrant place. We are now passing the Pomona Docks area. The Pomona Docks were developed on the site of the Pomona Gardens, named after the Roman goddess Pomona.
We'll need to be back here in an hour to go up the lock onto the Bridgwater Canal.
This footbridge marks the official terminus of the Manchester Ship Canal, and we pass onto the River Irwell. The navigation has narrowed quite a bit, and we can already feel the considerable flow of the water pushing against us. It is here that we also pass the site of the disused Holme Locks branch, which was once another route onto the Bridgwater Canal, much closer to the Castlefield Basin. As we travel up the River Irwell, we are getting closer to the centre of the city of Manchester. There are lots of riverside apartment buildings and hotels that line the banks of the river. We are making slow progress now against the strong flow of water as we pass under Regent's Road Bridge.
There's lots more development happening from the looks of all the cranes in the distance. This was once the entrance to the Manchester, Bolton and Bury Canal. 15 miles and 17 locks in that direction would have once taken you to the canal terminus at Bury.
Our pace has really slowed down. There's just so much water flowing downstream. This is the site of the lock entrance to the Manchester and Salford Junction Canal, which provided a direct link to the Rochdale Canal just above the fourth lock up from Castlefield, meaning you could travel from here to the Rochdale Canal without using the Bridgwater Canal at all. You can see just how slow we are moving now. The water is really pushing against us hard, and it's nearly time for us to turn around.
The building ahead on the left is the Lowry Hotel. We've been told to pass under the footbridge and make the turn there. However, Michael makes the decision to turn a little earlier as the water is really flowing fast now, and as far as we can see, the navigation just gets narrower.
This is where things get a little hairy. As I make the turn, we lose all upstream momentum, and once we are sideways across the river, we begin to get pushed back towards the brick arches of the bridge. We definitely do not want to get stuck against them. The river's only just wide enough for us to make the turn, and there's a tree protruding on the south bank that our bow only just misses.
Michael makes the turn like a pro, while George and I hide our eyes on the stern deck. Michael doesn't admit to me until much later in the day just how scary making the turn was, and that out of all of our adventures, it's the turn that we've just done in Manchester on the River Irwell that was probably the most dangerous.
From what we understand, it was once possible to travel a bit further into the city, but the Boxing Day floods of 2015 brought large amounts of silt downstream that has apparently never been fully dredged, and so we can't risk going any further. Now we're traveling with the flow of water instead of against it. Our speed has really picked up. This is definitely a good thing, as we've only left ourselves about 20 minutes to get back to Pomona Lock, where we're meeting the lock keepers at 8 a.m.
It's breakfast time in the Manchester Marriott.
Back past the Manchester and Salford Junction Canal entrance and under the railway bridges. The river is carrying us pretty swiftly downstream. The water has so much momentum that I could go into neutral, but I keep us in tickover so that I have steering. I turn us into Pomona Dock 3, and as soon as we've turned and are out of the flow of the river, it's like I've slammed on the brakes and we pretty much come to a standstill.
That white van you can see above the lock belongs to the lock keepers who work for the Bridgwater Canal. They've turned up right on time to see us through the lock.
If you're on your boat in Manchester and fancy doing this trip, you can arrange to come down Pomona Lock and moor in Salford Quays for a few days. The moorings are free, and it's much quieter than Castlefield Basin, but bear in mind that you need to pay a fee for each of the lock transits.
And after all that adventuring, we're back on the Bridgwater Canal.
I take a right turn and Joe and George jump off the boat. We're planning to go up the Rochdale Canal in a few days' time, which means there's a little section of the Bridgwater Canal that we haven't cruised on yet. So I take the boat down to the junction at Waters Meeting to complete this section.
George is happy to be finally back on the towpath and immediately makes use of the facilities.
The Manchester Metro runs alongside the canal. It's a good way to get around the city, but tragically it doesn't carry dogs. and then the canal passes right past Manchester United's Old Trafford ground. We came past here back at the end of August on our journey from Sale to Lee. Turn right here and you'll eventually get to the Leeds and Liverpool Canal. A left turn will take you to the Trent and Mersey. Now that we've completed the section, I turn around to head back to Castlefield Basin in the centre of Manchester, where Joe and George are waiting in the rain. The Bridgwater Canal was Britain's first arterial canal and opened to Castlefield in 1761, linking Manchester with Liverpool. In 1802, the Rochdale Canal was opened, enabling goods to be carried from here across the Pennines.
It's been a fairly damp start to the day, but now it's really starting to rain. Michael's getting wet on the back of the boat, and George and I have made it to the basin where we're sheltering under a bridge.
Castlefield Basin is actually a collection of basins that were once lined with warehouses and was fed by the River Medlock. The basins are crossed by 4 large railway viaducts. There's been much regeneration, and there are bars and apartments around the basins and shopping and museums nearby. There are lots of visitor moorings and some long-term moorings, and when we arrived the area is very full of boats. We just about managed to squeeze onto the end of a long line of visitor moorings. Our aim in Manchester was to recover from the last 3 days of cruising and make a plan for the next few months. However, we were soon to learn of emergency, unscheduled canal closures, which were about to send us round in circles. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and comment down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you want notifications, hit that bell. We are now passing the Pomona Docks area. The river is carrying us pretty swiftly downstream. The water has so much momentum that I could go into neutral, but I keep us in ticked over. Now that we've completed this section, I turn around to head back to Castlefield Basin in the center of Manchester. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, comment down below, subscribe to hit a channel, especially notifications and hit the bell.